comfort circle. By understanding that diversity is about all of us, and that discomfort can actually be helpful, we can begin to understand our third step that makes diversity work. That's self-evaluation. Frequently when folks talk to me about what they want to learn in regard to diversity, they often mention that they wish to know more about other cultures, other people, other races, etc. Rarely do they mention that they wish to know more about themselves. Well, this makes sense because we spend every hour of every day with ourselves, so why would we need to know more about the individual known as me? However, in order to know about others, we need to look into what I like to call the metaphorical mirror. That's where step 3, self-evaluation, enters. We can begin to take a look at step 3 by exploring our assumptions. Each of us possesses assumptions. Good, well-intentioned people make assumptions all the time. Sometimes these assumptions are positive and sometimes they're negative. An assumption is designed as a coping mechanism. Sometimes it's important for us to make assumptions in order to keep ourselves safe from harm. But sometimes those assumptions can be embellished within us and then can become a disservice to ourselves and to others. And if we do not take a good look at the assumptions we make, at times they can lead to a process which can become dangerous. Let us remember that each of us makes assumptions, and if we do so, that does not necessarily make us a bad person. I have been conducting diversity trainings since the early 1990s, and no matter where I go, whenever I walk into a room, there are folks who have never seen me before who might say to themselves, "What in the world is this guy going to teach me about diversity?" Because the assumption often is that someone who is a member of my race and someone who is a member of my gender is not part of this whole diversity thing. The thought process by some has been, okay, he's white, he's a he, man, I hope he's at least gay. So think about some of the assumptions you've made recently yourself, or challenge yourself to think about some of the assumptions you will make the next time you see people in a public place. I know I have to challenge myself all the time, just like anybody else. Do you assume that because a person is employed in a certain profession, he or she will be a certain way? Do you assume that because an individual may be a certain size or weight or height, that he or she is lazy or cocky or possesses little confidence? Do you assume that because a person is dressed in a particular way or drives a certain kind of car, that their personality is exactly as what you assume it will be? Occasionally our assumptions are correct, but often they can also be incorrect. In the year 2000, Time magazine distributed an issue which ranked, according to them, the top 100 people of the 20th century. The top 3 were Einstein, Gandhi, and FDR. Now let's imagine walking into a public space full of many people. Among all those people are these 3 men. One has poor hygiene, appears unkempt, and is extremely nervous around women. Well, this is Albert Einstein. The second man only wears homespun clothing, has no teeth, and looks to be on the verge of starvation. This is Mahatma Gandhi. And the third man cannot walk, is a chain smoker, and is rumored to drink 8 martinis per day. This man is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. If we do not know these men and make assumptions about them simply because of their appearance, is it possible that we may do a disservice to them and ourselves? And remember, they were designated as the top 3 people of the entire 20th century. The thing about this is that a number of other negative beliefs, ideas, and feelings about people places, and other things begin with a negative assumption that can result in a dangerous systematic process if we do not confront it within ourselves first. Without confronting the negative assumptions that we make, it can lead to stereotyping. This is believing that everyone we see as the member of a group is and behaves the same way. Without confronting stereotyping within ourselves, it can lead to prejudice. That is prejudging someone negatively without having enough information. Without confronting prejudice within ourselves, it can lead to discrimination. This is treatment or consideration of, or making a distinction in favor of or against a person or thing based on the group, class, or category to which that person or thing belongs, rather than on individual merit. The prejudice is the feeling or judgment. Discrimination is the treatment we create or give to that person based on our negative beliefs. By confronting negative assumptions within ourselves, we can move forward, but without confronting these things like discrimination, it can lead to racism, homophobia, and even scapegoating. Scapegoating is blaming a person or group of persons for the misfortune or perceived misfortune of ourselves. All of this begins with a negative assumption. And by confronting these negative assumptions in ourselves, we can not only stop a process that can be dangerous, we can present ourselves in a personal and professional way as positive role models for those with whom we come in contact. We don't need to stand on a soapbox to shout this out. Instead, simply presenting ourselves as someone who does not make negative assumptions can make all the difference. This kind of self-evaluation helps any diversity initiative to succeed, or if we may need to go back and modify a plan in order to make it work better next time. If at first you do not succeed, self-evaluate again. The fourth step that makes diversity work is known as practicing worldview. What this simply means is doing your best in putting yourself in the shoes of another person to the best of your ability as frequently as you can. By doing this as often as possible, we learn more, broaden our perspectives, and come closer to successfully making diversity work. This doesn't mean that we have to agree with everyone else's opinions, but if we do our best to understand the origin from where they have formulated these opinions, we can better understand why they see things the way they do without having to necessarily agree. Simply doing this helps us to avoid unhealthy conflict and work and live together in a world full of diversity. For instance, do you know what South Americans call South America? They call it America. Do you know that individuals born in the United States in 1991 knew Iraq as their nation's primary adversary their entire lives by the time they turned 18 years old? And in school, many of us learned that when we might be asked, who discovered the Mississippi River, we were to answer Hernando de Soto in order to get that answer correct on a history test. But when we think about de Soto's arrival to that region of what is now the United States, we can surmise that he did not likely stand before this large body of water and utter to himself or others, "I shall name this river the Mississippi." No, that didn't happen. That's because the word was already being used by the people who were already there when De Soto arrived. They were the Chippewa Indian tribe, who in their language called the river the Mississippi, which translated to English means great river or gathering in all of the waters. When we learned that De Soto discovered the Mississippi River, we start to formulate a worldview that history began with Europeans. We can broaden that perspective by simply saying Hernando de Soto discovered the Mississippi River for Spain, and the Chippewa Indian tribe discovered the river before he arrived for their nation. The beauty of this is that it does not discount the contributions of De Soto, but it also does not leave out the existence of the Chippewa. It does not tell us that we must change our worldview, but that we can instead expand it. This helps us to keep with step number 1 that makes diversity work, the inclusion of all and the exclusion of none. It tells us also that our worldview is formed and authenticated via each and every event we experience.